What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Ideal Offseason. This is the series where I get to put the GM cap on for an offseason of a random NBA team that I decide to do. Right now, we're doing the Toronto Raptors, and basically, it's my job to help them have the most realistic and the most productive offseason that they can have. And now, this is different for every team, right? Like, for the Toronto Raptors case, it's a little bit odd because we have teams like the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm trying to help them win a championship. For the San Antonio Spurs, I'm just trying to help them improve going into next year to support Wemby. The Toronto Raptors are like the Utah Jazz in the last video, a weird team where I'm not quite sure where they want to go, so I have to try and maintain this kind of sense of like, we're trying to remain competitive while also trying to help these younger players develop. This is a quick reminder to make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment on my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so, but I'm not going to make you wait anymore. Let's get into the video. So we're back here on the Ideal Offseason spreadsheet that I built, and a quick reminder, if you guys are interested in the spreadsheet, I basically make you jump through a couple hoops to get it. A lot of you guys have gotten it already, and that's been awesome. Basically, just leave a comment saying that you want the spreadsheet. Like I said, I respond to every single comment. I'll be like, hey, DM me on Discord. Here's the Discord link. You shoot me a DM, and then I get you the spreadsheet. Pretty simple. It's all a big marketing scheme to get you guys on my Discord. I'm very transparent about that, but that's what I'm going to make you do if you want the spreadsheet. All right. But anyway, we're here with the Toronto Raptors. Had a really interesting season where, they had Pascal Siakam, they had OG Anunoby. They were trying like one more time to make things happen. Didn't quite work. They ended up trading those guys, and they're like, all right, we're focusing in on Scotty Barnes. They brought in guys like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, who you'll notice isn't here because he's a restricted free agent. That's something we'll have to discuss, what we're going to do with him. But then they kind of just bottomed out, right? And they were like, okay, like this is what's going to happen, I guess. And they didn't even get to keep their pick. So kind of a scary situation that they're in. You'll see that they have the Pacers pick here, and you know what? Let's just zoom in a little bit and start going through some of this stuff. They still do have a first-round pick via the Pascal Siakam trade. They have the 19th pick in the draft. Not great in the Pascal Siakam return, but you know what? You had to get something for him, and that's what you got. If we take a look at the cap space, we actually do have cap space to go make a move if we want to. I can't imagine there's there's just not many superstars available. There's just not. Like, these guys don't really hit free agency anymore. It's not really a thing. So, but there is moves that we can make. We do have one guy in particular, it's Quickley, that we're going to try to re-sign, and then it's just kind of like, okay, what are we going to do with the rest of this? Are we just planning on Scotty Barnes eventually kind of taking up that money or whatever? What's kind of going to happen? Let's go over to the contracts really quick, and just like a spoiler alert and everything, like I understand that like Scotty Barnes needs to have like extension talks and everything. Like, he's going to get his big ass extension, right? I'm not touching that stuff. I know it's going to happen. I'm not going to try to figure out what that's going to be because it doesn't matter, because we're just doing the 2024 offseason here. But looking at the roster, we've got RJ Barrett, who played really well for Toronto as soon as he got there. We saw a lot of his shooting numbers increase. He was very aggressive in getting to the hoop. You saw his passing look very good. His defense was nice. RJ Barrett played pretty good. He had down times, but overall, like, his experience in Toronto, very, very productive. Excited to have him on the team. Want to see what we can develop in him because he's still a young player, right? We want to see what that is. Bruce Brown, kind of an interesting one here. Bruce Brown has 1 year left. He's got a team option right here. I'm going to let you know right now. Oh my gosh, why did that happen? I'm picking up the team option. He's coming back, but we're looking to trade him. Somebody somewhere is willing to give us a first round pick. If not, a good player for Bruce Brown, and he's probably not going to be interested in waiting around for this team to get like good or whatever. So I'd rather not lose him for nothing. His value is pretty high right now. He's one of the few like impact players that's probably going to be actively available on the trade market. I want to capitalize on that, so that's something we're going to look to. Jakob Poeltl, nice defensive center, right? Comes in, gets the job done, isn't too expensive. Love to have him. Kelly Olynyk. I know when I did the whole trade video of them making that trade with the Jazz and like trading one of their first round picks or whatever in the future for Kelly Olynyk and Agbaji. There was a lot of Raptors fans that were like, oh, well, Agbaji's better than anyone we're going to get with that pick or whatever. And I'm like, maybe. Like, I don't know. Like, I understand you wanting to have a stretch big and everything next to Scotty Barnes. It's just like, was Kelly Olynyk really like what made sense for you guys there? And like Agbaji, like, you've got enough guys at that position. Are you really going to give him the chance to develop? I don't really think so. I don't think it makes a ton of sense, but he's on the team. I can't imagine we're going to be trading him, so he's going to be sticking around. Can we pair Chris Boucher with Bruce Brown to make something really interesting happen is the question. He's got 1 year left. Worst case scenario, we say, okay, you know what? He's on the team for this year, and then he's not, right? I'm not saying Chris Boucher is like a bad player. It's just I don't really think he's worth paying like $10 million a year to. He's not a very dynamic player at this point in his career, and so I'm just not all that interested in keeping him around. So if there's something that makes sense, there's something that makes sense. But if not, it's just 1 year. It's not a big deal. It's not like we're winning the championship next year anyway. Scotty Barnes has a team option. We're gonna pick that up right now. Grady Dick, how can we put him in position to actually be an impact player for us this year? He struggled shooting his first year. He probably wasn't physically ready to be in the NBA yet. That's okay. I don't really care about efficiency in like rookies until like the end of their second season. That's when I want to see like them, start to correct themselves and some of the mistakes they always make. So let's try and put him in good position. Jalen McDaniels, maybe another guy we can partner up with a Bruce Brown, because someone will be like, ooh, tall guy that can play defense on the wing. Very interesting. So something that we could possibly use in a trade, but otherwise not the biggest deal. Agbaji, yeah, we'll bring him back on the team option. That's totally fine. Not too worried about that. And then Javon Freeman Liberty, his contract isn't guaranteed. I'm personally not very big on him, and so I don't plan on bringing him back. My buddy actually coached him in the G League and was his developmental coach or whatever. Says he's a very nice guy or whatever, but just kind of like, I'm not really sure he's NBA ready or whatever. So that's my thoughts on him. You guys can sound off. I'm sure some of you Raptors fans love him, and you're like, he has potential. Everybody's got potential in every fan base. Y'all want to know what my favorite comment is, though? Like, I love when you guys preface all of your comments with saying, like, hey, Utah Jazz fan here, hey, this here, like that somehow constitutes that you like know something about basketball or whatever. It's totally fine if you do it. Like, I get that, like, you want to seem like you're like, hey, I have been watching the games or whatever. I just always think it's funny because I'm like, okay, like, I don't really know what that means, but like, that's just me being a cynical asshole. Looking at the picks and everything, Toronto at least has their first round picks going forward. So that's good. If we absolutely bottom out ever, that's a good thing to know. But we don't have a lot of extra picks at all. If anything, we're actually just missing a 2025 second. Not sure where that went, but it went somewhere. But yeah, this team is going to be interesting. I feel like we need to go into this season with the perspective of like, okay, we need to give this little core here, and I mean the core of like Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, and like Emmanuel Quickly. Like, let's see what kind of these guys' ceilings are. Can RJ Barrett take another step? How good is Scotty Barnes as the number one option, right? Like, can Grady Dick become a rotational player for us? Like, it's going to be a year of experimenting with that. How good can these guys be? And to do that, I want to make sure I put a competent team around them. Like, I don't want to completely bottom out this team. Like, let's spend a little bit of money. Let's try and make sure that we have good players on this roster. Let's try and draft somebody that can help this team right now, or maybe trade the pick, right? Like, what can we turn Bruce Brown into to kind of help this team develop? And so that's what I want to kind of focus on. And I want to start with the Bruce Brown thing, because maybe we're trading him for a first-round pick this year or something. And what I'm going to do is I want to go to the player contracts and first see, like, is there a player that makes sense for Bruce Brown? So there's Bruce Brown there, right? You see his $23 million. Is there a name around here that could be on the trade block that could be beneficial to us in some way or manner? Here's something that's kind of interesting, the Duncan Robinson contract. Like, sending him to the Miami Heat would make a lot of sense. Like, that seems like a great place for Bruce Brown to fit in. Does it make a ton of sense for us to take on Duncan Robinson, who is a floor spacer, and when you look at our team, like, why do my grid lines keep coming back on? What's going on, Google Sheets? My grid lines are not on. Why would you guys show me these? Back to basketball. There's not a ton of shooting on this team. Like, we got like okay shooting, like was pretty solid for us this year. We hope Grady Dick's a good shooter. We're going to be looking at Emmanuel Quickly. Hopefully he can be a shooter. Kelly Olynyk's like kind of a shooter. So it'd be nice just to bring in a Duncan Robinson, a guy that can just space next to these guys and be a wing option like that. We could throw RJ Barrett then at the 2 sometimes and have Duncan Robinson in at the 3. That could be a kind of cool thing. And then we probably take like their first round pick or something like that, right? Because that's how good Bruce Brown is. Is it worth for us to have like the 15th pick in this year's draft? Like, how good is that pick really to us? So I don't really know what that does. It's something to think about, but I don't know if that's really the solution that we want at the moment. Is there any way we can make a CJ McCollum trade work out? Is there any way that we can somehow acquire the Pelicans, like, draft pick or something? We get a CJ McCollum who brings us a nice veteran presence that I don't know what's going on with my grid lines right now. You guys are just going to have to ignore it. But bring in a nice veteran presence. We also make them take on, or we get to take one of their first round picks because we're taking on the contract for him. They get Bruce Brown, who helps them win a little bit more right now and kind of retool around the Zion thing that they're trying to do. So maybe that's kind of an option that we could explore. I think about that then, and if we bring Quickly back, we've got two very small, frail guards that we're playing. Like, we have a bunch of other good defenders on the team, but that's not always the best thing in the world, so I'm a little bit hesitant on that as well. Tyler Hero is 100% a name. Like, if the Miami Heat really just didn't want Tyler Hero anymore, and I know that Miami Heat fans are kind of ready to throw him into the fire, that's certainly something we could explore. Tyler Hero is a good player at the end of the day. Like, he's a talented scorer. He has his deficiencies, and he hasn't gotten like a ton better since getting in the NBA. Like, he's still not a very good ball handler or distributor, but he wouldn't have to be on this team. So is there a world where we say that happens? And I want to keep this realistic as well. And Pat Riley's talking about, like, no, I just want to retool things. But he also, like, did come down on Tyler Hero and say, like, bro, you got to start, like, taking care of yourself. You got to be healthier. There's just too many health problems with you. You got to get in shape. Like, you got to do these little things. You got to start getting better. And so maybe it's not out of the realm of possibility to say, like, hey, like, are we just doing, like, a Bruce Brown, Tyler Hero type swap? They're very different players. Bruce Brown obviously fits Heat culture and everything, and that's why we even talked about it with the Duncan Robinson trade or whatever, but obviously Tyler Hero would fit in very nicely on this team here, like as the floor spacing too that can go get some buckets, right? We need some more bucket getters on this team, so maybe that is something that we try to explore. But I'm going to look around just a little bit more, see if there's another name that makes sense, or maybe there's like a draft pick or something that makes sense. I'm looking through the mock draft quick to say, like, is there a team that would just love to have Bruce Brown that we can trade the pick for? I'm not thinking we're getting anything that's within the top 10. Maybe the Memphis Grizzlies say we'd rather have Bruce Brown than someone else. I don't know. Like, I'm not completely sure. I don't think the Utah Jazz necessarily want him, not the Bulls. Would the Oklahoma City Thunder take him? It depends on what happens in their offseason. I suppose Sacramento Kings, that could be an interesting addition to them, not the Portland Trail Blazers. Again, there's the Miami Heat. Like, I think that pick and like Duncan Robinson makes a lot of sense. So that's something to think about. Like the Philadelphia 76ers, they could go get Bruce Brown and bring him in. Like, he's a guy that's a win now player that can make some winning plays for them, possibly off the bench, and we pick up the 16th pick. I could just see something like that working out, especially since they have the cap space to just absorb him. So maybe there's a world where we can make that trade happen. Just something I'm thinking about with the Pelicans or whatever. Like, what if we did like an RJ Barrett, like Brandon Ingram swap, like pair RJ Barrett and Zion back together? That could be kind of interesting. I think I want to explore this Philadelphia 76ers trade first. So we're going to go over here to Fanspo. We're going to do the trade machine thing. If you guys don't know what Fanspo is and you haven't been watching the series, it's a really cool website where you can do a bunch of different things in the NBA and NFL with it. And they've got this nice handy trade simulator for us. So let's go to where are they? There's the Philadelphia 76ers, right? All of these guys are off the contracts except for B-Ball Paul. But otherwise, like, we don't really have to trade them. I just want to take a look and see what picks they have that they can give us. Like, do we want another first round pick this year? Or do we want a future first round pick, right? Like, maybe I want 2 picks in next year's draft so that if we just kind of suck next year and maybe we get like the 4th pick in the draft, then we have another pick and maybe we can move up and get the exact guy that we want or something, right? Because next year's class is supposed to be a little bit deeper. So let's explore that, right? So we trade Bruce Brown over to the Philadelphia 76ers here. And then what kind of picks? Oh, y'all don't have 2025 picks. Oh, what am I even talking about? Y'all don't got no 2025 picks. So you guys are useless to me. Absolutely useless. Okay, well, I don't necessarily want to explore this quite as much then, do I? I want that pick. Unless, is it really worth, like, what? They're going to receive the worst of this pick, their 2026 first. No, I'm going to assume that they're still trying to win in 2026. So, I'm not so sure I want to do this. All right, let's just take a look at the Miami Heat, man. This just seems like destiny, right? This seems like where Bruce Brown belongs, right? So I assume we try this trade, right? They're going to be like, nope, we got to cut the $23 million or whatever, right? That makes some sense. Okay, so who are we taking back? Is this a Tyler Hero trade? Are they giving up on him, or are we taking on Duncan Robinson? To me, this seems more like a Duncan Robinson scenario, and I get a future pick. Well, actually, let me see. They don't have 2025 picks either. Does New Orleans have 2025 picks? New Orleans does have 2025 picks. Okay. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. And they can trade them all. Okay. let's explore this. Bruce Brown over to the Pelicans, right? We get back their 2025 first round pick because they have Milwaukee's pick too. Milwaukee's going to be better than them. We want to trade that 2025 pick to us, and I presume that like we have to cut the whole 22. Yeah, okay. It's actually a little bit less than the other teams, but we still have to trade them over. So can we just do? I don't want to do CJ McCollum necessarily. Can I steal like a Dyson Daniels from you so that I have like another young interesting player kind of to look at? Like, is he 6'8"? There's no way he's 6'8". He's like 6'6" most. I've definitely stood next to him before, and there's no way that's him. But I actually like Dyson Daniels as a player. I think he's really interesting in the sense that like I don't see him as like a point guard. Like, what do they have him? Yeah, they have him listed here as a point guard. I see him as more of a 2/3 even, because he's like a good defender. I actually think his shooting form is pretty good, even though he hasn't been a good shooter at times. I think he's got passing capabilities. So I think he's an interesting guy to kind of plug in and see what happens, right? So let's say we trade him to the Toronto Raptors, right? Like, what kind of happens with this? I still have to cut $10 million. Okay, is this something where I'm just going to have to do the CJ McCollum route? Because if that's the case, then that's the case, because I don't really want to take Larry Nance on. We don't need him. None of the other guys make a ton of sense. Okay, so let's undo that then, and let's just say we're doing the CJ McCollum route, where they give us CJ McCollum. They're trying to trade him. We'll take on his contract, right? We'll take on the veteran presence or whatever. We get a first-round pick out of it as well. Do we make them give us something else as well? Because we've kind of got them held captive. CJ McCollum's going to be a hard name to trade. Do I want another like future like second round pick? They don't really have any second round picks. And I'm only really going up to like 2029 for things. So is it really worth like all of that? Could I make them give us their like swap rights in 2026 with Milwaukee as well? I think that's somewhat reasonable, honestly. So you know what? You're going to take on both of these for Bruce Brown because he's that impactful of a player or whatever. We get one first-round pick and we get the right to swap with the team, which it's probably not going to convey anyway. But you know what? It's worth it to me. Let's try this trade. What do we have? We have a success. Yes, I know he's probably going to have to opt in to his option or whatever. So Toronto Raptors fans, this is what you ended up getting for Bruce Brown. You got a 2025 pick that we're hopefully going to use to move up in next year's draft to go get us somebody. And we got the 2026 Milwaukee swap rights. All right, so Bruce Brown becomes CJ McCollum here. This is now CJ McCollum. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. And now we also have the Pelicans 25 first-round pick. In this 2026 first-round pick, we now have swap best with Milwaukee right there. So those are the assets that we acquired with that. That's cool. We're not going to be very good defensively in our backcourt. And you know what? That's just what it's going to be. Like, quickly, he's not like bad. He's just small, right? And so there's just limitations to those things. We did eat up a good amount of cap space. That's fine. He's going to be a nice veteran on the team because we don't really have too many of those at this point. It's just kind of him and Olynyk. And it's not like any of these guys are problem guys anyway, but he could be a nice guy to help Grady Dick develop or something, help him get his shots up or whatever. So we got 6 roster spots left now. Is there anybody else we want to try to move in this? I don't necessarily think so. No, I think we're kind of just going to kick it with this group for now, and I think we're going to go into the draft with these 2 picks, and then we'll fill out the rest of the roster from there. Alrighty, so we're back here on the Fanspo. Now we're using their mock draft tool, which is a pretty cool thing. It's got the most recent draft order implemented now, which is very, very handy. I think that this adds a sense of realism to it because we're using the AI to kind of go through what could happen in the draft. I think it's better than me just being like, oh, I think this guy's going to be available at this pick, so that's what's going to happen. I think it adds a sense of realism to it. I see Ron Holland dropping in this draft right now, which, oh, there he goes, which I think could honestly happen in real life. I think that's kind of interesting. But this way, it also just kind of makes us think like, okay, so now we're up, right? We got the 19th pick, a couple guys available. What do we think? And I already know who I want. I want Kel'el Ware with this pick. If he's available at the 19th pick, I totally want Kel'el Ware. I like Tyler Smith. I just think that he is kind of playing the same position as like Scotty and possibly RJ. And so I don't want to do that. I see Kel'el Ware as a potential starting center in the future for us, right? Because Jakob Pertl has some years left. We could always move him if need be. Again, I don't know what's going on with my grid lines. Google Sheets is just glitching right now. Kelly Olynyk, not sure he's the long-term solution to things. I like Kel Elware better than like any of these dudes to bring in. I'd rather bring in a guy that I could try to play this year, try to develop him a little bit. I think he's the spacing center that we eventually need next to Scotty Barnes. So we'll do whatever it is we're going to do with Jakob Pertl and Kelly Olynyk and Chris Boucher. Maybe we'll try to find a trade for them still this offseason then, since this is who became available. But for now, I'm going to take Kel Elware. Kel Elware would be making this much money. I'm going to just throw him here for now, so just be patient with me or whatever. I'll find a way to move Chris Boucher in some capacity this offseason so that we can assure that he's getting some sort of minutes. And like we could logically say that like Chris Boucher is like over here, but like I don't want anything in the way of Kel Elware getting a chance to develop or whatever. But now that we've used the 19th pick, we actually have the first pick in the second round, which is pretty cool because we have the Pistons second round pick. So we've drafted Kel Elware, and now ooh, there goes Zach Edey to Cleveland. Interesting selection, but this is basically another first round pick, which is pretty cool. So we'll see who's available here and see if there's kind of a guy that we can get for a steal. I do see a name available that I like, and I'm probably gonna pick him if he's available, and he is. It's Terrence Shannon. Now, I'm just going to put it out there, Terrence Shannon, obviously, there's some stuff going on, and that's the simulator obviously is aware of that or whatever. There's some legal things going on. I'm going to act as if nothing's going to happen to Terrence Shannon or whatever, and that there's he's going to get a chance to get drafted. We'll put it that way or whatever. Obviously, we hope that whatever happens, there's justice for it. But for the sake of this video and everything and the value of Terrence Shannon Jr., I personally see Terrence Shannon Jr. as a top 10 draft pick. I'm so serious. I do. I think that's how talented he is, at least for this class, right? Like he's in the top 10 of my big board in essence. I just think he's a great defender. He's a great shot creator. He's got a couple different moves to him. Like he's very athletic. I like him a lot. So with our last pick, I'm going to pick Terrence Shannon Jr. So that's about how much Terrence Shannon Jr. would make, second round pick, so he gets a 2-year deal. Let's just assume, for the sake of things, like, I'm going to throw him here in the depth chart for now. He'll be a guy that we're just going to try to develop, throw into a good culture like the Toronto Raptors have, and try to turn into something, because I truly think he could be something in the NBA if everything goes in a way where he can actually come to the NBA. We'll just put it that way. All right, so we've used our 2 draft picks. We've got 4 roster spots left. And we've got our own free agents to tackle now. Obviously, we did what we did with Bruce Brown. Gary Trent Jr., I don't personally see a point in bringing him back. I feel like he's better off trying to get a chance to develop on another team. Garrett Temple, don't really need him back. Jordan Nwora, haven't really seen enough of him developmentally in the NBA, not too interested. Emmanuel Quickley will be bringing back. Malik Williams, not all that interested. Jonte Porter, well, that situation's hilarious, isn't it? But let's talk about bringing Emmanuel Quickley back. How much are we going to have to give Emmanuel Quickley to come back? In 38 games for the Toronto Raptors, he averaged 18 points a game and shot about 40% from 3 on 7 attempts a game. That's pretty dang good, y'all. That is pretty dang good. The team was better with him on the court as well, and that's something to pay attention to. Like, the team was just better with him on there, so his offense outweighed maybe his a little bit more poor defense. So what are we giving Emmanuel Quickley a year? Like a starter in the NBA at this point. I figured out how to make the grid lines go away. Watch this. If I type something, they kind of go away for some reason. So I don't really know what all that's about. But Emmanuel Quickley, a starter in the NBA at this point is about $20 million, right? Emmanuel Quickley, decent young player or whatever. RJ Barrett's getting $25 million. And how did he do in comparison? For Toronto in 32 games, 21 points a game. He also shot about 40% from 3 on less attempts or whatever. But like if we look at like his on-off numbers, what is the contributing factor there for Toronto? He made the team a lot better. So I'd say we pay him less than we pay at least RJ Barrett, right? And that makes some sense to me. So RJ Barrett's making 25. Can we say 22.5 over 4 years? I'd say that's more than fair to bring Emmanuel Quickley back. So let's bring Emmanuel Quickley. We're thinking 22.5. Over that time, you get a 4-year deal out of him. Very good score. I like Emmanuel Quickley a lot, so that's what we're giving him for a contract. totally spelled Terrence Shannon Jr.'s name wrong, but that's totally fine. You guys don't need to worry about that. I'll fix it right now because I know somebody was going to leave a comment about it. And there's Emmanuel quickly. All right, so we've got our starting point guard now. We've got an interesting backcourt that has some shooting to complement these guys. We're probably going to have to stagger some minutes here, but hopefully somebody else kind of becomes maybe like a closer for this team at some point. Like maybe it is a Grady Dick who has a little bit more size that can still be a spacer. I don't know. We are out of cap space now, so we're not signing anybody else new necessarily to the team, but that's why I kind of want to explore Chris Boucher to see if there isn't a team that can maybe absorb his contract for us. So if I come here to find Chris Boucher, around $10 million, right? That's something to consider. Is there a team that would be willing to take him on for a similar player? I don't necessarily know. I'm just kind of looking around that first, but maybe I should look at the teams that have the most cap space first. All right, so I'm looking here at like active cap space right now to see if there's any team that could just like absorb him that would probably be interested in him. Like, would Utah take him on for something? Maybe because they're just trying to remain competitive. Maybe OKC would because they just want to have some other size on the team that's a little bit dynamic. I would assume they kind of want a different big, but something to think about nonetheless. We could talk to Indiana again because they're a little bit inconsistent in their backup center play at times. Like Philadelphia is obviously an option. Maybe they just kind of want a Chris Boucher. And just to remind ourselves, like, what we're trading in a Chris Boucher, like, at least from this last season. You're trading 6 points a game, a guy that didn't really shoot it all that great, like, gets a couple rebounds here or there. He's kind of an iffy player, kind of at the end of his career. Like, is there a team that would just, like, want to take him on for some reason? I just don't know. I don't know how much sense that makes. Like Detroit, like they don't need any more bigs or anything. Charlotte, do they need another center? They could probably use a backup center. So do we like pay them to take him? I don't know if that's worth it. I feel like we kind of just got to let Chris Boucher kind of like run his course. And then if we want to make a trade, like at some point this year, like he's a trade piece that we can use. But anyway, we got 3 roster spots left. I would say most of the rotation is pretty set. Like the only thing we're kind of missing is another point guard, and like even then, like it's going to be him. It's going to be CJ and Quickly. So, but I want to look at just like other ones that are available that we can kind of get on a minimum contract, because that's all we can bring in at this point. So, looking at point guards like Kyle Lowry coming back would be a really cool story. But do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. Like Reggie Jackson's not gonna not accept his player option. That's definitely going to be something he opts into. Patrick Beverley's not going to join the team. He wants to play on a winning team. Cameron Payne could be interesting, but that's, again, a smaller guy. I'd like to bring in a defensive player if possible. I feel like I do Chris Dunn in like a lot of these videos, but I could see him being a guy, again, like a DeLon Wright. I would be surprised, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in Miami, so I'm not all that interested in him necessarily. What are the odds that we bring in like a Russell Westbrook or something like that? Wouldn't that be kind of interesting? Like, he doesn't seem like a Toronto Raptor necessarily, but, you know, I didn't see Russell Westbrook doing a lot of different things throughout his career. I don't think that's necessarily the guy we need, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him like jump onto a team like Toronto, but I feel like he's going to take like a little bit more of a payday than a minimum, so I'm probably not going to consider that one. You know what, let's just go with the Chris Dunn one. This is ideal offseason at the end of the day, and it's not an ideal offseason if you don't sign Chris Dunn to a minimum contract. Chris Dunn satisfies the need to have a larger point guard on the roster and somebody that's a little bit more defensive oriented. So I think that that's a pretty valuable thing for us. I might look to bring in another one still just for depth purposes. And then what we'll probably try to do is just add like one more wing and we'll probably call it there. So let's take a look at like who that could be. Like a Jordan Goodwin was honestly kind of like an interesting player to me this season. So I wouldn't mind like taking a look at him. Do we want to bring in like another vet? I don't necessarily know. Spencer Dinwiddie, I don't even think we can sign him because they cut him. So I'm not too interested in that. Malachi Flynn, like Detroit might just bring him back. So that could be a thing. You know what? I kind of want to go after a Jordan Goodwin. Like he's got a little bit of size to him, which is interesting. He comes in at 6'3", 200. Okay, I thought he was a little bit heavier than that. He looks a lot stronger than that, but I'm okay with bringing in a a Jordan Goodwin. Where is he? There's Jordan Goodwin here. He is a 4th-year player, I believe. I just want to make sure of that. Oh, 3rd-year player, actually, so we get him for even cheaper. Here's his minimum contract amount. If you guys were ever wondering, that's where I get these numbers from. So there's his minimum contract amount. For 1 season, we bring in Jordan Goodwin as a guy to kind of just, let's see what happens. We bring him into camp. I saw enough of him in Phoenix to where I liked him personally, so I'm curious to see what a Jordan Goodwin could do for us. All right, now let's go just find like one more forward to kind of bring on this roster to kind of round things out at the very end. Preferably a guy that can shoot a little bit, like a Joe Ingles. Like, he could be available. That could be a nice name to have in the locker room to try to remain competitive, and he can handle the ball a little bit too if needed, which is always a cool thing. We don't have a ton of shooting at the wing between Ochai and McDaniels, so I like the idea of bringing in a Cedi Osman as just like a minimum contract guy. So let's go get us some Cedi Osman. So 1-year deal, Cedi Osman, we bring him here. Let's just move McDaniels over here for the sake of balancing things out. We'll throw Cedi there, and you can decide between yourselves who would play more, Ochai or Cedi. But yeah, this is your 2024-2025 Toronto Raptors. What did we actually accomplish in this? The biggest thing that we did was bring in CJ McCollum, who, is he going to help us win more games than Bruce Brown? That's yet to be determined. I wouldn't be surprised necessarily. I bet you CJ's got at least one more year of like productive basketball in him, and it's a little bit more of an offensive weapon that we could probably use on this team. So that's a good option. It's nice to have some shooting around Scotty and RJ Barrett, but obviously we acquired the pick next year, the Pelicans pick that we are hopefully going to pair with our pick to help get ourselves a young rookie next year that we really, really want. Presuming that that's what we want to do, right? But also we brought in a Kel'el Ware and a Terrence Shannon Jr., 2 guys that we think could be nice rotational pieces for us, and Kel'el Ware possibly even a long-term center for us. So I really like these additions. I think that these make a lot of sense to add to the team. I know this isn't the most exciting thing, but the most important thing for the Toronto Raptors going into this season is like Quickly, Barrett, Scotty Barnes. Let's give them a full season, a full offseason together. Let's see what they look like. Like, how good can these guys be? Because that's going to determine the direction of things. So we didn't blow up the team by any means. We kept the core close together, but also made sure we remained flexible going forward. And I'd say that was the biggest thing. We didn't go too far into luxury tax either, which is good because we're going to need to re-sign a Scotty Barnes at some point. But I'm excited about this team. It's not a long-term thing we have to worry about with big contracts like McCollum or Pirtle, guys like that. They're movable, right? Everything's movable. So I like this team. I know Toronto fans are very passionate, so I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to think. What do you want to see happen? Maybe the Tyler Hero trade is something you really wanted. But yeah, no, you guys let me know in the comments below what you think of this one. I'm very curious to see how this team would do in the East. The East is kind of wide open most years, especially as of late, so maybe these guys could do something with a full off season. But hey, appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.